So thanks for joining us today in this STAR training on Microsoft Accessibility Windows 8. My name is Laura Parks, and I'm an Assistive Technology Specialist for Tasc, which is Technology Assistance for Special Consumers, and we collaborate with STAR, which is Alabama's statewide resource for assistive technology, to provide trainings free to families and to professionals throughout the state on assistive technology. We are also, Tasc is Alabama's only Microsoft Accessibility Resource Center, and so we want to make sure that we get the message out there how Windows is made accessible to accommodate individuals of all different abilities. You're seeing on your screen right now the startraining.org website, where it has lots of information and various topics to help you learn about assistive technology at your convenience at any time. And also there's a link on the main page to a handout called Microsoft Accessibility Webinar. And when that opens, you're going to get a PDF, and it will open a PDF that is a brief handout for today's session with just some handy links. Today's training is really focused on the accessibility features of Windows 8, although we will talk some about the Windows 8 features and characteristics and using it, but I highly recommend following that link that says End User Training Brochure. I want to show you briefly what that looks like. This has been a very helpful tool for me when I learned how to use Windows 8. And I'm going to just go ahead and close this one. And you're going to see it's going to open up a great handout that you can download, this Windows 8 user training brochure, and it has some great information about the basics of Windows 8. And you can just slide through it. It's got several pages, but it really does clarify how to use the Windows 8 itself. So that is linked right there on the startraining.org website. So let's get started at the very beginning of Windows 8. And once you even before you log on to the computer, what you're going to see is you will see a Ease of Access logo. So if you have trouble logging on, it will help you. I see someone raise their hand, and I don't see any questions. So if you have a question, just tap it for me. And I also do want to get your feedback before we get deep into this. The first thing I would like to know is I'm going to send you a poll, and I'd like to know which technology do you use as your primary computer as far as what operating system you use. And so I'm going to go ahead and send you a poll if you'll just answer the question. This will just let me know what familiarity you are with it. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. It looks like 2/3 of you are currently using Windows 8, and one person is using an older Windows operating system, which is great. And the next question I'd like to know is, how do you best like to use your technology? So when you use the technology, do you use it to touch the device? Do you like to use a mouse and a keyboard, or do you prefer using a specialized mouse and keyboard, maybe a joystick or a head mouse? Okay, it looks like everyone is used to using a mouse and a keyboard. Now I do want to share with you that Windows 8 is designed to be used on a touch screen or a tablet, but it works equally great as with a mouse and keyboard. Now I will be showing some mouse and keyboard functions and some touchscreen functions as we go through today, but if you look at the handout as well, there's specific links to how to use Windows 8 best if you're using a mouse and a keyboard versus using gestures. And one more question. I do want to get an idea of what kind of cell phone you use. Now, until about a month ago, I was one of those simple no apps kind of girl, and I was using a flip phone, and I loved it, loved the data package, no fee for that. But I have recently updated to an iPhone, and it looks like 2/3 of you do use iPhones, and there's 1/3 of you that are using simple no app phones. The reason I asked this as far as the phones is because I think it's important to understand if you guys have a concept of using icons and touch screens. So if you're using an iPhone or if you were using an Android phone, you would have some familiarity with it. And that's really where Windows 8 takes their inspiration from. Individuals enjoy using touchscreens and using icons, so that's why when we go to the new Start menu, you're going to see it looks much more like maybe a smartphone front or a tablet front. But it still functions just like good old Windows that we're familiar with. So let's get started with the ease of access. So I'm going to pull up my main page, which all I have to do is on my keyboard is there's a little button about halfway on the left side that has 4 squares that represents Windows. And when I push that button, I get my tile menu or my start menu. So in order to pull up ease of access, I can do it 2 different ways. There's a keyboard shortcut, which I can use by hitting Windows and U for usability. And immediately the Ease of Access Center pops up as a window. I'm just going to close it briefly. So that was a Windows and a U, which pulls it up. And when you pull it up, you will hear it talk to you because it automatically turns on the narrator. But for this purpose, I've turned it off so you can't hear it. You only hear my voice. Now, if I didn't want to use the Windows shortcut keyboard shortcut, all I have to do is swipe with my finger on a touch screen from the right, which brings up my charms, as they're called, or kind of my quick panels, what I like to think of it as. And I'm just going to hit search. And when I hit search, I can just start typing ease, and it immediately pops up in my settings, ease of access. So Control U or going to your search settings, ease of access will bring up your ease of access center. And the Ease of Access Center has been something that's been in the Windows operating system since Vista. So if you're using Vista or 7, the Ease of Access Center is there. And if you're not using that, if you happen to be using XP, it's still available. It's just called the Accessibility Center instead of Ease of Access. So let's take a look at some of the features of the Ease of Access Center. Using this is really as simple as answering questions and knowing what kind of user you are. So they've identified the 4 most common Ease of Access Center tools that individuals with disabilities may need to use. So the first thing is the Start Magnifier, and I'm going to click on that. So here's my magnifier, and as you see, when I move the mouse, it's docked, meaning that my magnifier doesn't move. I move my mouse, and what's magnified is on the top of my screen. So I could be using the touch screen and rotate, or I could be using my mouse to navigate that. Now if I come over here to the magnifier, I'm just going to click it, and I can go now down to my views. Maybe I want to see it as a lens. Now as a lens, where my mouse moves is where it magnifies. So if you have some low vision issues, maybe you've left your glasses or broken your glasses and you need to be able to see something on the computer, you can just use their magnifier. And I'm going to come back here. I can change what percentage it zooms. Now the more you zoom, sometimes it does get pixelated. And this is where you have to understand that sometimes even though you can see it if it's magnified, it may be quicker for you to read something if the computer reads it for you, like using Narrator. And I'm just going to shrink that back down to my 200%. And I can also go to settings, and there's a few more options. Click off of it to let you see that you can change your taller, the height of your magnifier, the width of it, and what it looks like. You can also turn on color inversion, and I'll show you what that looks like. And now I have a different contrast. Some individuals with visual impairments have an easier time if the text is white and the background's black. So that's where using the magnifier and having it invert the colors can make it a little bit easier to use. I'm just going to go ahead and cancel, and so that's the magnifier. The nice thing about this is it's already built into the operating system. So if you're an employee and you're going to a different workstation at your office, this tool will be right there in the Ease of Access Center or in the control panel, and you don't have to install anything. So it really does make it universally designed. You could also go to a computer at a library or other public facility and use it by just going to the Ease of Access Center and pulling up that magnifier. Now, Narrator is another tool that's in the Ease of Access Center, and this is designed for individuals who are blind or have very low vision. And what happens is it reads everything. So if a error message pops up, it reads it aloud. It'll read images, so if I was at the STAR training website, it would say STAR logo, it would say calendar picture, so it describes everything it's seen. Sometimes individuals with learning disabilities or dyslexia or English language learners, it helps for them to have text read aloud to them because maybe they're not proficient in printed or typed text. Well, Narrator reads more than they necessarily may need, but this definitely could be a tool they could use, but it may do a little too much for them. The Narrator also works great with shortcut keys, so if an individual can't use the mouse because they're visually impaired, once Narrator is started, shortcut keys work really good, and that's where instead of having to point and click to things, you strictly hit keys on the keyboard and your window scrolls, it opens new windows, it opens and does different things. Now I want to spend a minute on the Start On-Screen keyboard. So I have just clicked on Start On-Screen keyboard, and this is the on-screen keyboard that comes with the Ease of Access Center. It's a little confusing because if you're using a touchscreen laptop or a tablet with Windows 8, there's already an on-screen keyboard. And let me show you what that on-screen keyboard looks like. I'm going to just move the on-screen keyboard that's part of the Ease of Access Center to the top. And now let me pull you up the one that's built into the operating system. So if you were not using a attached keyboard, you would use it. And I'm going to open up a Microsoft Word document so you can see when I were to type in there. All right, I'm going to close the on-screen keyboard just to, it's not playing nice. All right, and so this is the touch keyboard. And so when I go into Microsoft Word and I don't have an attached keyboard, or maybe I just want to use the touch screen on my tablet or my touchscreen laptop, so I'm just going to go ahead and type a little message. I'm just going to zoom in too so you can see it. So I can type in, did you have thunder last night? Oh, and I did a typo. So this is the on-screen keyboard that comes standard with your Windows 8, and it's designed for touching. Now, if I use my one that comes with the Ease of Access Center, what you're going to see is it's a little bit different. And I think you'll see instantly how it's different. Now, I can resize this using my mouse and dragging the corners. This was something that was added in some of the later on-screen keyboards. In the XP version, you didn't have this luxury. And now when I'm going to type, maybe I want to add the word storm. And I'll show you what that window was just a minute ago. I've been playing, if you can tell. So if I want to add the word storm to my Word document, when I use the on-screen keyboard, this is the one from the Ease of Access Center, I type in ST. Do you notice up top there's word prediction? Word prediction is a very helpful tool for lots of individuals with various abilities. So let's say you were using this on-screen keyboard with a mouth stick. Well, using word prediction minimizes how many times you actually have to hit keys in order to type a word. It can also help when you're a poor speller because it'll guess what you're trying to type before you finish it. So I was going to type the word storm, and it still hasn't guessed it, so that was a bad word to pick. Storm is not a high-frequency word, so it guesses high frequency. But if you also notice, I did misspell it by putting 2 O's, and it still guessed storm. So it's a helpful tool, even for those that are poor spellers. Now, the nice thing, too, about the Ease of Access on-screen keyboard is there's some options that are not available with the built-in one that comes with the standard Windows 8 when you're just doing the touch screen. What I've done is I've clicked Options, and if you can see, I can hover over the keys. So when I hover over the keys, I don't even have to be able to left click. I just wait a minute and it puts the word. So if you'll see it, it's filling it in. And if I go into my options, it'll give me the speed. So if maybe I'm using a head mouse and I can move my head to move the cursor, but I don't have a way to click efficiently, I can just hover over this on-screen keyboard's keys and it will pick the letter that I want. This keyboard also does scanning, so even if you can only hit a single switch, you could still type. So I'm going to demonstrate this now. I'm going to go ahead and say scan through the keys, and I'm going to use a keyboard key. Now if I needed to use a mouse, I would have a mouse interface, which Tasc has several. If you ever need to borrow one, you're welcome to borrow them from us to see how they would work. And so now I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And now when I hit the space key, or if I had a switch, I'd hit my switch, it starts scanning. So I'm going to just put a space in there. So there's my space. I hit my space bar. So I'm going to type in the word thunder. And then when I see my letter come up in the group is when I do it. And word prediction still works with scanning. Now I've practiced scanning so I can go fairly fast, but maybe I'm new to this or I have a delayed reaction time. I need time to motor plan what I want to hit. So I'm going to go ahead and bump it to be slower. And now you're going to see I can slow down that scan speed. So now I have more time to make my choice, which is really important when you're first starting to learn, or if you have delayed reactions. So the reason it's nice to use, and I'm just going to escape and close, go back to click on the keys. So it's nice you have two options with Windows 8 if you're using an on-screen keyboard. You can use the one that's standard if you're using a touch screen, well, it'll pop up, but it does not have the word prediction. But if you want to use an on-screen keyboard with word prediction, with the ability to hover over the letters, and the ability to scan, then you're going to want to use the on-screen keyboard that can be found in the Ease of Access Center. And this is already pre-installed on Windows operating system. You don't have to install it. I'll say that probably 100 more times, but I think it's just really important because that makes it easy to use. All right, and let's go back to our Ease of Access Center now. And there's one more tool. I'm not going to change it because sometimes I get panicked and don't always know how to change it back. But you can also change the high contrast of your computer. So instead of having all the pretty blues and yellows, it strictly goes black and white with some yellow and some accent colors to really minimize color overload and to help with contrast if you have some vision issues. So Microsoft, with their research, has found that those 4 tools are the most primarily used ones by individuals with disabilities. But everyone is unique, and so maybe those aren't the type of tools that you need help with, but if you scroll down, you'll see they have some other choices. So maybe you need to use computer without a display because you're blind or you just visually don't do that. Make the computer easier to see. One of my favorite things is make the mouse easier to use, so I'm going to click there. If you'll notice, I have a nice large black cursor, which can help find the cursor. I can also turn on mouse keys, so maybe I don't have a mouse and I'm just using a keyboard. I can use my keyboard as a mouse, which is great if you're ever using one of those wireless mouse and the batteries go dead. You still have an option to be able to use your computer. You don't have to go run find a set of batteries. And there are some other options as well in there, and I'm just going to click OK. So it really gives you lots of options within that ease of access to make the computer easier to use. Now the nice thing about the Ease of Access Center was when you walk through it and you make those changes, it's only going to save it for your profile. So if you're logged on as a computer and let's say you're sharing your computer with another coworker or with a spouse at home, when they log on under their account, none of the changes have gone into effect because it's unique to the person that's logging in. And that's what's nice too with the new feature. I can't show you my login screen because we'll shut down the webinar software, but with the login screen even you see ease of access instantly, immediately, because what people were finding was an individual with a visual impairment can use the computer successfully, but they had to have someone log it in, and that's really not being independent. So with ease of access being right there at the start and using a shortcut key, the Windows and the U for usability, then you can easily pull up that Ease of Access Center and get started. All right, are there any questions? Just feel free to type them in if you do. So we've talked a little bit about the Ease of Access Center as well as the difference in the on-screen keyboard that's within the Ease of Access Center and the on-screen keyboard that comes built in. It's the primary one. within the Windows 8 system. All right, I don't see any questions, so we're going to go ahead and go on. Let's talk a little bit about the tile format of Windows 8. So I'm going to just hit the Windows button on my computer. You might be familiar hitting with Windows button on your computer because on a Windows 7 computer or an XP, it brings up your Start menu. Well, when you hit the Windows button in Windows 8, it brings up your tile screen, and your Start menu is now a tile screen. You know, the tiles really is the first thing that shocks people when they open a Windows 8 computer because it is so drastically different than the Start menu on the Windows 7 and Vista or XP. Well, the nice thing about Microsoft is they did realize that some people were going to be hesitant to use this. So often from your Start menu, there'll be an icon even to go back to the desktop. So let's just click back to the desktop. And now you see this is, and I'm just going to close some windows so you can get an idea of what your desktop would normally look like if you didn't have everything open. And so this is your traditional looking desktop. So even when I'm at my tiles in my Start menu in Windows 8, which is this one, I can always get back to my desktop either through the desktop icon or through hitting Windows and D for desktop. And you may not have known this, but Windows and the D button also works in 7 and Vista to pull up your desktop on your computer without minimizing every single window. So what I want to encourage you to is not to get used to using just your desktop. Really give the Start and the Tile menu a chance because it does have some great options. If you think about, as we're looking at the classic style desktop, you know, the icons can, be moved around the screen some and organized. I could use my accessibility feature and make the icons larger, but it's really kind of hard to group things together. And if I was using an alternative pointing device instead of a traditional mouse, maybe I have some fine motor skills and I'm going to use a trackball with my foot and I need to be able to use my foot to move the mouse. It's kind of hard to be accurate and precise if you're using your foot. And that's one of the things that I really like about the Windows tiles is that I can change the tile size. If you'll notice, I have some long tiles and I have some smaller square tiles. And I can make this, I'm going to show you with this picture tile, I'm just going to make it to a small one. All I do is left click and drag it over here. And when I also right click it, it brings up this menu on the bottom. And that's when I can make it smaller. So there's my option to make it smaller. So now my photos tile is smaller. Now if I wanted to make it bigger, I'll do the same thing. If you're using a traditional mouse, you would just right click to get to this menu. And if you're using a touch screen, instead of right clicking, what you're going to do is you're just going to drag it down. You're just going to wait until touch it, and then you'll see the little check mark come, and that means you get the menu down here. So maybe I want to make my photos larger again. And now I've made them larger. And it'll pop back up in just a minute. If you'll notice, some of my tiles also have revolving pictures or revolving text. This makes it nice, so maybe I'm a user and I just want to see what the weather's like in a certain city. So if you'll notice, the weather in London today is 68 degrees, which is the same as Paris. So it's constantly updating me the world weather. I can change that and make it so it only shows the weather in my area or things that are pertinent information to me. So I have several ones that are running right now. Now, if you've ever worked with anybody that maybe has ADHD and attention issues, these movable tiles may be distracting to them. So the same way we moved a tile to make it smaller or larger, you're just going to right-click a tile that has this active text. And if you'll see on the bottom, it now gives me the option to turn the live tile off. And as soon as I do that, it will stop updating like that. So if distractibility is an issue, that is something you can do. I don't know if you've noticed, but within my tiles, I have also made a grouping called Work Programs. So this is a really helpful feature for somebody that has memory issues, concentration issues. I know I'm one that uses different programs for different reasons, so now I can group the tiles on my start menu according to their function. So maybe I have work programs, maybe I have my social media, so my Facebook and my Twitter all in one group. So it's really easy to group the tiles and then you can label them. So perhaps you're working with someone that's had a traumatic brain injury and really has a hard time remembering details. So I could say, okay, we're going to create you a folder for work, we're going to create you a column in your tiles that's for social stuff and a tile for games, and that can really help keep things straight. And that's pretty simple to do. I'm not going to demonstrate it today because it's a little difficult to see with using a mouse or using hand gestures, but there's some fantastic YouTube videos to help you do that, or if you look at that ultimate guide, it will tell you how to do that. You can also, with the tiles, you can add apps. So I know some of you all were iPhone users, and I am an iPhone and an iPad user, so I'm very familiar with apps. But when I think about what apps do I use, I really use a lot of apps just for fun. And I'm guilty of using, I'm just going to double check to make sure no one has any questions. I am very guilty of using a lot of apps for fun. So like Candy Crush right now is my current #1 used app. But there are also some very good functional apps. I use apps for communication when I work with various clients, for text-to-speech and different things. But Windows apps are not going to be nearly as numerous as the apps that are for Android and for your device, your iPhone or iPad. Their apps are really designed for functional uses. So how can you become a more efficient worker using apps? So for example, I've downloaded my app for Evernote. Evernote's a fantastic online storage where you can put information and retrieve it quickly. It's kind of like, just think about having that drawer that you put all your Post-it notes in and then you can't find your Post-it note. Well, Evernote's the virtual one, but it makes it really easy to search. So that's one of the apps that I've downloaded. Now, if you want to look for apps, you can get to apps for 2 different ways. One way is on your Start tiles. You should have a tile for the store. And if you'll notice, mine's right there in the middle. It's green with a shopping bag on it. So that will pull up the Windows Store. I can also go to the Windows Store by simply pulling up my Charms toolbar, which is on the right-hand side of the computer. To pull that up, I move my mouse either to the right top or bottom corner, and I get these charms on the right-hand side. And if I'm using a touch screen, I just bring my finger from the right-hand screen and just pull it in just a little bit to the left, and now I've opened up that menu. So now I'm going to go ahead and click Search, and it gives me the option to search the store. So now I'm in the Microsoft Store, and like I said, there's not nearly as many apps on the Microsoft Store yet, but they're really trying to keep them to be productive apps. So they've got some top free ones, some top paid ones. Let's take a quick look at the top free ones. So here's some of the apps, and I can scroll it. They do have some fun ones. There's Deal or No Deal. That sounds like fun. Maybe you do Facebook 4 Pics in 1 Word, one of the social media games that you can play with friends, so that you could do that. You can also search for apps. So let's say I want to search for a specific app. I'm going to just bring my Charms back by touching the right-hand corner with my mouse, or swiping in from the right side, and I'm going to search now. And if you'll notice, my App Store is highlighted, so that's where I want to search in the App Store. And maybe I want to search an app for visually impaired. So I'm just going to type in the word visually. See if we can make it a little more specific. So here's a couple ideas that they recommend, just 3. Now if you type in visually impaired in your Android or your iPad app store, I imagine you're going to get well over 50 options. We can even try something like a Magnifier. So the App Store is quite small in the Microsoft, but remember, they're really looking for functional utilities to make working more meaningful, not necessarily fun entertainment, but how can we be more productive using Windows. As the store grows and more people are using Windows 8, I suspect we will have lots more apps, but we're just going to wait and see. So if you're looking to find apps as far as like with Android or Kindle or with an iPad, this is not Compare. So I just wanted to give you that heads up. But there are some very useful, helpful apps. And maybe we'll have to do another webinar on apps that can be helpful for individuals with disabilities as far as AT-wise. So I'm going to just go ahead and exit this by going back to my tiles. I can do that two ways. I can hit my tile Windows button on my keyboard. What I also like to do is I'm using a touchscreen laptop, so I'm going to take my finger from the right-hand side and I'm just going to swipe from, I'm sorry, I said right side, but I'm going to swipe from the left side and move my hand right, and this kind of goes through all my open windows. So I'm placing my finger the left side of my monitor and I'm moving it towards the right. There's my desktop. I move to the right. There's that book I told you that's, or that free download that will give you some ideas on how to use Windows 8. And we're going back. And so I'm at my Start tiles again. I did cheat and hit the Start menu button. And if you'll notice too, when I swiped from the left to the right, I had several things open. So I am done with this book, this handout that I showed you. So in order for me to close it, there's no little X on the right-hand side of the screen. Now, if I move my little mouse up there, I pull up my charm, so that doesn't close it. There's this plus and minus down here, but I don't want to do that. So in order to close this, what I do is I move my mouse to the top of the window, I left click and I drag it, and if you'll notice it got smaller. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw it in the trash can. The trash can, to close it, is located at the bottom kind of your screen, so when you take and drag this down, you'll see it gets smaller and starts to fade away. That's when you know you're closing the app. So now I'm just going to go ahead and close that or the program that you were running. And now if I swipe through my open stuff, you'll see it doesn't come up anymore because I'm done with that. So that's just a little bit quick thing how to do it. Now I can also, the nice thing too, what I enjoy using is when I pull up my charms on the right hand side of the screen, I can search for things. So if maybe I did a file and I can't remember what I saved it as, but I knew I had the word test in it, then it will pull up a file for test, and there it is. It was actually called test, my file. So you can easily search for a specific word in the title or within the document just by swiping from the right towards the left and doing search, or if you're using your mouse, just simply touch the right corner, top or bottom, to pull up that same menu. Now when I touch the left side of the screen and swipe and right, that's when I switch windows. I can also just drag my finger a little bit and I can now have two windows open at the same time. I don't know if you've been seeing the commercials on TV, but this has been one of the selling points, the advantage of a Windows 8 over like an iPad, because you clearly can have two windows open. One could be an app and one could be your working thing. And I can just swap those back and I just drag that center bar to make it go away. I can also see all of the windows that I have open by just dragging my finger a little bit from the left to the right, and it pulls up this kind of vertical toolbar of all my open windows, and now I quickly can select which one I want to go back to. Now if you're using your mouse, you would simply left click to the top or drag your arrow to the bottom left, and then you get that same thing. So I do that with my finger touching from left to right, or you can do it with your mouse by touching the corners. In Windows 8, it's all about touching corners and touching the sides. If you can just remember that, then you'll be fine navigating the system. It takes a little bit of practice to get used to which side was I supposed to touch on, but usually the side you touch on is also the side that pulls up that information, so it can help build that visual memory as well as that motor memory when you're doing those kind of tasks. Let me just go ahead and open an app for you, and I'm just going to open up Sticky Notes for you. And when you open an app, you often just have an app that's open like this. Well, it's great, it has the title, but I have no idea how to use this app. So in order to learn how to use an app, you can use your mouse and either drag your finger on click on the bottom. And actually, I told you wrong. In order to see the features and the toolbar and the settings of your app, you actually right click. So when I right click, now I can see I can save, I can export, I can import, or I can add a sticky note. So let's add a sticky note. And the sticky note is going to be, please take the survey at the end of the webinar. And now if I want to add another sticky note, and I can move them just by clicking and dragging. So I love sticky notes, and this just keeps them all neat and organized for me. And when this toolbar disappears, because it will not always be there. So the toolbar is gone. I would either right-click to bring that settings back up, or I'd go to the top with my finger and drag from the top towards the middle of the screen, and it pulls up that settings in the bottom. This is true for any app. So any app that you're running, if you want to change the settings or figure it out, need some help with it, either right-click within the app, and you'll see the toolbar come on the bottom, or when you drag your finger from the top just a little ways down, the toolbar on the bottom will pop up to give you the settings for that app. Let's review a minute, and I want to go ahead and close this app so there's no clicky things to click, and right-clicking just pulls up that menu, so that's not going to work. So I'm just going to take and drag down and drag it like I'm trying it in the trash can, and now it's closed, and I'm back to my Windows 8. So you have your different software again, and we're back to our tiles. And I want to briefly talk about one of the reasons I like Windows 8 tablets or other features is that most Windows 8 tablets and laptops have USB ports. Now, USB ports are fantastic because they're universal. So if I have a joystick mouse, if I have a trackball, if I have a large big key keyboard, or if I even have one of those cheap $20, $10 Easy C keyboards that are as seen on TV, I can plug it directly into my Windows 8 laptop or Windows 8 tablet, and it will recognize that tool and be able to be used. Now, if you happen to search YouTube videos, you'll see that Tasc has made a YouTube video showing that this is true for some Android tablets, because some Android tablets are USB capable. And even with the iPad, we can cheat and plug in some tools, such as a Big Keys keyboard using a camera connector, but it's just really not practical to access the entire iPad because it messes it up. So I wouldn't necessarily encourage trying to plug a USB into an iPad, but it is possible. But it is not possible at this time to plug in an external mouse like a joystick or a camera mouse with the iPad, although with some Androids you can use the USB mice and keyboards, and hopefully eye gaze is coming for the Android tablets and for iPad tablets. But guess what? If you need to use eye gaze and you can only move your eyes, Windows 8 is compatible with most eye gaze systems, so you don't have to wait. You don't have to get the old technology with the Windows 7. You can go ahead and get Windows 8 and be able to use eye gaze because of those USB ports and because Windows is such a standard operating system for those software, those peripherals that you may need to have different things. I'm going to just show you a couple more things, and we'll wrap it up today. Windows speech recognition is built in to the operating system like it has been in the last few releases. I've created a tile on mine, but if you don't have a tile on your start menu, then you would just pull up your charms. So I'm going to drag in from the right, or I can touch a right corner, and I can do a search. And I'm going to just search for speech recognition, and it will pop right up as an app, or it could come in your settings as well. And when you do speech recognition, it will pull it up. I won't do it today, but it is a great tool, and you can use voice commands even to control your computer by doing mouse grid, and then you can move the mouse wherever you need it to be moved, which is a nice option with the speech recognition. Now when you do use speech recognition, it's going to take you back to the standard desktop, not to the tiles. I haven't had an opportunity to play with it much to see how well it does with tiles, but I don't think it plays nice at this time. But Windows is upgrading, and so it may have improved. I haven't played with it that lately. One quick thing too, I'm just going to go ahead and go to the internet, and I happen to have it open already, so I'm just going to move my mouse to the left side, either the bottom corner or the top corner, and I can see what's open. I'm going to pull up Internet Explorer. And so I am at the Microsoft website, and the text is a little small here for me. So I love with Microsoft Accessibility features is I can make this text bigger with some shortcuts. Now, if you're using a touch screen like I am, I'm going to cheat and just use my fingers. Most people that are familiar with tablets know that you just simply pinch outward or stretch the text. So I'm just going to pinch outward. My fingers are going outwards. And as you can see, I made the text quite a bit bigger. I'm going to pinch inward. So bring my two fingers closer together to make the text smaller. Well, that's great if you have a tablet or a touch screen. But what if you're trying to use your mouse or keyboard? So you can do the same thing by hitting Control and plus or minus. So when I hit the Control key, hold it down, you hit plus, it gets larger. If it gets minus, it gets smaller. So that's a great shortcut feature. That works for Internet Explorer. It works within Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, and Outlook. Any native operating system programmed to Windows, or many of the developers also include those features with their coding. So using either dragging your fingers, pinching it in or out to make things bigger or smaller, or you can use Control plus and Control minus. So that's just a quick shortcut. And we've talked a little bit about the apps already. Are there any questions? We've kind of been flying through this, and like I said, if you're a new user to Windows 8, some of the gestures and some of the features can be tricky to learn. So that's why within that handout I've tried to give you some good resources to make it quick and easy to learn it, because it does take just a little bit of time and patience to figure out how to use the different new features of Windows 8. Are there any other questions? Well, I think I have met my learning objectives today. Hopefully you have seen that Windows 8 doesn't have to be something that you dread trying, or if you've switched over the operating system, hopefully you've explored it and seen some of the features. And just keep in mind that Ease of Access Center, which you can access by hitting Windows U, is a great starting point if you're not sure how to make the computer easier to use. Now, I do ask when you leave the webinar, you'll receive a quick poll, a quick survey. If you please just answer those questions, that will help us. STAR is a federally funded program, and so there are certain questions that we have to report back to make sure we're meeting our goals as a program. And if you have any other questions, feel free to just shoot me a question or chat question, and if not, you're welcome to email me. So I will pull the STAR training website back up, and we are finished. Thanks for coming, and I will send certificate of completions to everyone who participated in today's training.